Greetings all, I'm the ForeverDM and this is Flashbacks, a show where we take a walk down memory lane and revisit some of my favorite moments from past campaigns. Today's flashback follows Lacall Galanodel on his journey from irredeemable villain to reluctant hero. So I had a friend that I was living with at the time named Ben, and Ben was disappointed because nobody lets people play evil characters in D&D. He wanted to play an evil assassin. He always thought it would be really cool. He had a great concept for it, but he could never play it because everybody's like, evil characters are such a pain and you can't have them in a party. And so I said, you know what? All right, bro, give me your best. I'll do it for you. And he was beyond thrilled. So it started as a solo game, but only in the planning phase. When we actually started playing, it became a group game because, of course, our friends saw us talking about it, and we're like, oh man, yeah, let us play too. Anyway, Lacall specifically, he was born in Evermeet. He became an assassin. He was a affluenza-style child. You know, an affluent elf who was bored and, I just like killing people because I'm a monster like that. You know, your generic noble or CEO. One of his targets ended up being his father. Unlike most people who might have a change of heart at that point, he wanted to really cement that he was going to be evil, and so he killed his father and his mother, killed both of his parents because, they were controlling anyway. So really set the stage for him being a problem. And then he gets chased into a gateway, a portal to the plains, because he's being pursued. So he ends up in Sigil. Lots of people call it Sigil. It's actually Sigil. And it's Sigil on purpose because you can tell who isn't from Sigil by who calls it Sigil instead. It's actually one of the fun things about the Planescape setting. But I digress, as I'm going to quite a bit, so just bear with me. He ends up bound to another group of idiots, which is the other players. He decides that he's going to take random jobs because he needs to get money to find out how to unwind their souls, because now they can't get farther away from each other. They can't leave the plane unless they do so together, because they're actually bound up from taking the same gateway at the same time. One player is a gnome warlock named Wilfred Fizzlebang, straight out of World of Warcraft. And that kind of stuff often makes my brain completely melt when somebody just yanks a character completely out and throws it in to another setting. Isekaiing someone straight over can go good or go bad. And Wilfred Fizzlebang was really freaking annoying in World of Warcraft. And he was just as annoying in the party as he was in WoW. The other player was your run-of-the-mill, dumb as soggy toast barbarian. And it was perfect. So Lacall is your typical shit stirrer rogue, the one that you hear all the horror stories about. He steals from the party, he hides treasure. He would figure out what stuff is and then not give it to the other players. But unlike most games, it was funny when he did it because the other players were all in on the joke. And not only were they in on the joke, they would specifically go out of their way to play dumb and not realize that he's ripping them off. So it was quite the party dynamic because, Wilfred Fizzlebang isn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, and the barbarian sure isn't going to figure out that he's being ripped off. He's just happy that he has 2 silver pieces to rub together to buy some ale. While Lacall's over here, pulling out his Leomund's secret chest and being like, man, look at all this treasure we got. And he would give them magic items that would be useful for them. He wasn't a complete shitbag. He wanted to be successful. And sometimes that means having a couple of idiots to take on the things that you can't do yourself. Or to just go out in front and take a couple of hits while you sneak around the back. It was fun because everybody was in on the joke. This wasn't a Kender surprise egg by any means. In one mission, just to highlight how dense some of this is, it almost got to Scooby-Doo levels. They take a mission to wake up people who are falling asleep in a specific area of Sigil. They discover there's some dream monster that they need to kill, and they have to go to sleep in order to fight it. So once they realize they're standing in this shop and they're like, we have to go to sleep, Wilfred just picks up a chair and bashes Lacall over the head with it to try and knock him out. It doesn't work, of course, because, that's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. The hilarious party combat ensues, a la Three Stooges, where they're like slapping each other. The barbarian is throwing them around the room because he thinks that they're just having fun. And oh god, it was a mess. So the Alley of Dangerous Angles was one of my first mistakes. Lacall noticed their leader is a dangerous assassin woman herself who goes invisible. She's got a ring of invisibility, super OP, because I wanted Lacall to think she's dangerous and cool. So of course, he wants it. He heads to the woman to buy the ring. He has a bunch of money. She refuses, so naturally, Lacall decides to kill her and take it. He tries to assassinate her and fails because she's immune to his assassination ability, so he only wounds her. She crits him and kills the hell out of him with her crit damage. We think he's dead, and we're like, oh, I guess that's it. And the other guys are like, oh man, what are we going to do? And then Ben goes, wait, I have light fortification on my armor. So light fortification was a great thing in 3.5. It was an enchantment you could put on your armor, and it made you immune to critical hits and sneak attack. But it only had a 33% chance, I think, of actually canceling. It was like 33 or 25. And so we're like, oh no, he might still be alive. And so Ben picks up his percentage dice, he throws them, and sure enough, son of a bitch, he lived. She didn't crit him. So he decides to pretend like he had gotten critically hit and play dead. So he rolls his acting roll. I roll to see if she's, I roll her spot, I think it was, to see if she can see through it. And nope, he succeeds. And so she's gloating over him and lamenting the foolish assassin challenging her. And he lays there for the number of rounds that he needs in order to study her, to have the save or die for his assassination ability, and then just gacks her. She fails her saving throw. I nat 1'd it, and I'm like, oh, well, shit. Now he's got a ring of invisibility. Mistake number 1. Lacall getting more powerful. Only to be followed by several more, but at this point they break up for some solo missions. And this is where I started to plant the seeds. I had decided when I was running this campaign that not only was I going to allow him to play an evil character, and not only was everybody in the party in agreement that it'll be fun to play with this evil shit-stirring bastard who is totally out for himself and doesn't give a crap about anybody, I am going to not only do that, I'm going to give him opportunities to be as evil as he wants to be, just to see how far he takes it. And one of those ways that ended up coming out was in his solo missions. He would take a mission to assassinate somebody, kill a random person in Sigil. I'd have him, take out some Waite Abishai, or I'd have him assassinate a Hound Archon who had caused somebody some problems. Fantastical creatures, the occasional humanoid, just to be like, hey, Sigil is a smelting pot. This one was another courier mission to travel the plains. And he loved to take those because one of the things that he liked to do was write down pathways to get from one plane to another. He liked exploring, and I love the Planescape setting, so I was super down with it. After a half dozen of these jobs, he takes a random job to deliver a package from the first layer of hell to a random city on Toril. Lacall travels to the Bronze Citadel, which I had decided was not only a fortress, but also has a completely functioning marketplace. I made it an evil city, a la, New York, except probably smells less like sour milk. So it has a place for people to make deals with infernal masters. So if you have the ability to go to hell, then you can actually go down there and barter and trade. This was before I had really discovered soul coins. This was many years before Baldur's Gate 3. So a lot of that was just, cash money flowing back and forth between evil machinations and bureaucracy. So cue me describing Lacall having to go through devilish machinations and bureaucracy that tries to entrap him into servitude, which is mostly just me playing it out for fun because the devils are actually just toying with him. They don't have any actual intention. Sure, if you fall into one of these traps for morons, yeah, they'll damn your soul and take it, and you're a servant forever. But it's more of a joke to them. They're lawful evil bureaucrats that are just funning it up. like we all imagine people at the DMV are doing behind our backs. But Lacall gets through that. He goes, picks up the package. Turns out it's a fairy in a glass bottle. And he's like, WTF, mate? There's got to be some bullshit here. He tries to figure out what the bullshittery is, asking questions. They're like, no questions, no answers, no dice. You take the job. You already signed your name to it. You do the job. You get paid. Works out. How to make a path of portals between Avernus and Toril. I guess that's a little bit easier now, El Torel? Whoopsie. He goes to a small forest clearing outside of a massive city on the Sword Coast. It's water deep, but I don't tell him that. I don't even tell him that he's back on his home plane, because he didn't really care. He didn't have worldly knowledge. He was a affluent elf boy in Evermeet who didn't give a crap about anything except for assassinating people and, getting his adrenaline rush. So he's out there in this clearing, and he meets with a beholder surrounded by charmed commoners that serve as brainwashed servants. So Lacall is super skeeved out. He's not sure he wants to hand this fairy over. He doesn't know if he's really meeting the person who he should be trading it off to. And so the beholder says, oh, that's understandable. You want to renegotiate. Let us call up the originator of the package, and we can rework our agreement. Lacall has no idea that it's the Xanathar. Ben has no idea that it's the Xanathar. He didn't even know who the Xanathar is at this point. He does now, thanks to TBA, but that's a whole other story. Lacall accepts. He's stoked. He'll get some more treasure, maybe even some even better stuff. And if you're sensitive about suicide stuff, then you probably want to skip ahead here about a minute or so. The beholder orders one of the charmed commoners, who is obviously held against their will, to lay their wrists open and draw an infernal sigil on the ground in front of them. And so he watches this person slit their own wrists and then walk around in a circle painting the grass with their blood and then collapse dead in the center of it as the last of their blood runs out of their veins. And so Ben is just like, oh, that's fucked. I mean, Lacall's fine, but damn, dude, that's dark. And I'm like, correct. You're dealing with evil people. Anyway, with their last breath, the commoner's soul calls up Bel, the Archduke of Avernus. Bel, of course, is surprisingly charming and hears out Lacall's concerns, confirming, oh yes, no, this is the correct recipient. You are to deliver the package to him. And Lacall wants to negotiate for more, so I'm like, you know what? Go ahead and roll it. And he rolls moderately well. I don't even roll for the Archduke. I let a die clatter, look at it for half a second. Bel doesn't care. What? This evil guy wants some more gold coins for what he's doing? Sure. Instead of shutting him down, Bel goes, oh, well, I see your point, and doubles his pay. Lacall, without any other reasons not to give it over, just is like, well, I guess we're doing the thing. And he thought I was going to stop him, slow him down. I'm like, no, full speed ahead on the evil train, bro. Let's go. He hands over the fairy. The Xanathar uses one of his eyes to open the bottle, and the fairy transforms into her true form. The nature deity Elana herself, who appears to Lacall as Elenestra, a golden-haired elven maiden. Already beaten and bruised by Bel, she is shackled by the mind-controlled slaves of the Xanathar. Elana does not seem angry with Lacall, but sad instead, and tells him, what comes is not your fault, for you knew not what you were doing. As a little bit of background, Elana was a deity that came out in the 3.0 era. She was the nature goddess, but she was like the good side of nature. The, live together in a cottage, don't chop down all the elves' trees, farm the land, till the soil, but, live in concert with nature rather than in opposition to it. Well, this is going to be a problem. So the Xanathar disappears with his minions. Bel's summoning circle gutters out, and Lacall is left standing in the empty clearing with a bunch of money and a corpse. We ended up having to take a couple-week break at this point, and Ben was having a time of it. He was so stoked that he got to do something evil. I didn't handhold him or punish him. I just let things play out. I played the evil guys like they were evil. I played the Lord, the Archduke of the first level of hell. He was psyched. At first. As the first week wore on, he was starting to question some things about Lacall, about how the knowledge that he had helped imprison an actual god's essence would make him feel, much less a goddess of nature and goodness. And by the time 2 weeks had passed, he was realizing that I was just going to continue on the story as it was. I wasn't going to rearrange things. I wasn't going to move stuff around. I wasn't going to go ahead and grab the goalpost and slide it back. No. Ilana is gone. The planes would change as they should with the lack of a god of that type. And that started to concern him a little bit. So when we came back to the table, he became a little obsessed with finding out what was going to happen. A little bit of research told him that the followers of Ilana across the planes were losing access to their spells. You know, when your god is gone, or your god dies, or you're cut off from them, usually either you lose all your powers immediately, or you slowly lose access to your spells, starting at the highest levels first. And her priesthood in the Beastlands were involved in the rumblings of a civil war as they started to lose access to their most powerful magics. So Lacall just decides that the party's going to travel to the Beastlands. The other players are thinking it's going to be great. They have heard about what Lacall did, and they're like, all right, we're going to have a blast. We're going to wreak some havoc. The followers are all off kilter. We're going to make a bunch of money and magic items. We're probably going to, loot some temples to Ilana. They could not have been more wrong. They seek out the most powerful priestess of Ilana they can find, a unicorn whose name escapes me, and they get the full lowdown on what's going on. The setting is not exciting. It's morose. The party isn't getting a huge cash-in. They're looking at the war-torn remnants of a good people under the weight of a battle they can't win. So my concepting for the Beastlands was a land in harmony. There were believers in the wild ways of animals fighting on instinct that I called the followers of Tooth and Claw, and they were led by Obad-Hai, who is another nature deity who is flat fucking neutral. Does not care about good, evil, does not care about law, chaos. It is all about instinct, and that's it. And then there are those who live in harmony with the natural order, led by Ilana. And the two of these groups had like a grudging respect for one another. The followers of Ilana appreciated the strength of the followers of Tooth and Claw, the followers of Obad-Hai. The followers of Obad-Hai had a grudging respect for the followers of Ilana because their goodness brought them together, and their support for the greater good allowed them to overcome where individualism would have fallen and failed. So, the unicorn is hoping that the adventurers might be here to help. With Ilana's power waning, there was a symbol of authority that had been held half by Ilana and half by the followers of Obad-Hai, and that was the Yggdrasil, the World Tree. It's being sieged by the followers of Obad-Hai, and piece by piece they are seizing it, and an all-out war is brewing. Obad-Hai's followers believe that Ilana's fall means that the law of Tooth and Claw will soon be the way of the Outlands, and they plan on taking the last vestiges of Ilana's ways by force. Either they are going to convert to the way of Tooth and Claw, or they die. That's the way of their natural order. Lacall decides to tell the unicorn that he is the one that delivered Ilana into her chains, and the unicorn is pissed. But after hearing the goddess's words, only because that slippery little bastard made his saving throw and did not get paralyzed, unlike his companions, she accepts his regret for what he did, even though he does not say that he regretted it. The party accepts a small mission to scout out the World Tree, and I make up a cool villain guy from Obad-Hai that's supposed to show up several times, being like a recurring problem. He has a ring that lets him cast Dimension Door 3 times per day, so there's no way Lacall can catch him. Lacall catches him, and now he has that ring. Well, fuck. I just made it more powerful again. I was so frustrated because I had made this guy, and I contemplated being like, oh, the ring only works for him. But that's such a bitch move. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna live with my mistakes. I'm completely raw dogging this entire game and just being like, okay, we're just going to do raw D&D. The way the cards lay, they lay. If the characters do evil things, it happens. Let's go. So I let him have it. And I'm just watching him growing more and more powerful. He can turn invisible. He's already an assassin. And now he has a ring that he can dimension door 3 times. Oh, it's just getting worse. But as a consolation prize, I am gifted with the entire party now being fully on board with this storyline. They want to help the followers of Alana. The Barbarian and Warlock are confused as to why Lacall cares at all. But hey, they are all into it, so they just don't ask questions. So, side mission time. Let's do some more things, because I like to throw in the little side adventures and then come back to the main story. The party decides they're going to take a side mission to figure out what happened with Wilfred Fizzlebang's family. It's supposed to be a great story of how his family has this long line of powerful mages, illusionists, blah, blah, blah. The guy was a throwaway character by my friend. He acted silly and weird a lot as a character quirk. He was pretty typical low investment, but it was just for fun. None of us judged him about it, even though he literally stole a really annoying WoW character that we all disliked, including the guy who was playing him. They go to his family tomb on his home plane. Yeah, no, I sent them to the World of Warcraft world, but don't worry, I didn't let them tramp all over Azeroth. I didn't want to deal with that. I created some cool undead monsters that have this negative energy burst around themselves, making them really dangerous because negative energy healed undead and harms living creatures. So I'm like, all right, they're going to take some thinking to get around this one, to unearth the secrets of the tomb. No, apparently not. That's not what we're doing. Wilfred just rushes into the middle of things, and instead of falling back once they're overwhelmed, he fights to the last and dies, being raised as just another one of the undead after his fall. And then the Barbarian and Lacall just shrug and bail. They just left his corpse there as it rose up to walk around like, well, guess that story's a dud. Enjoy your afterlife, bro. Just fucking left him there. And the player was just like, and made another character. I don't even remember who he made. Then he just like made another dude and continued on. And I was just like, well, I guess I'll throw away these 4 pages and toss the dungeon in the garbage. Anyway, Lacall, for him, stuff is getting deep. Ben has decided as the time has progressed that he needs to figure out how to actually redeem himself for the evil he's done, because he's starting to see the difference in the places that he can go in his afterlife and is going, maybe being super evil and ending up as a pile of pustulant flesh in the hells is not actually what I want to, end up as. So he started looking at the Book of Exalted Deeds and found the Slayer of Domiel, a badass, lawful good rogue prestige class, which is what you used to do when you wanted to customize your character. So Slayer of Domiel, lawful good rogue assassin, specifically to kill evil creatures, demons, devils, aberrations, stuff like that. So he decides, like, this is what I really want, but I don't feel like the lawful part actually fits. So we kind of look at it and I go, really, I don't feel like lawful good is a necessity for this. So I kind of waive it, and he starts his path toward redemption. He starts taking quests to help others, to try and make up for his ill deeds. He starts supporting the Society of Sensation in Sigil, the Sensates. They're one of the factions. They're all about, like, experiencing the world and stuff like that. He starts working towards manually spreading the knowledge of how much better doing something good can feel than doing something evil and selfish. It doesn't hurt that he knows a cool wizard there, which works with him on identifying magic items he's found, so he can, keep them from his friends. And that wizard became such a problem for me. I came up with this concept that he was just going to be this great sensate wizard, and that was what he was all about, was creating new, they have like these crystal things that you can actually pay to experience, and you'll actually like go into kind of like a VR realm, almost like a brain dance out of Cyberpunk, and experience it. And that was what that mage did. But he was also a powerful wizard. And at one point, Lacall, Ben loved to roll on tables, and he has hot hands. He hates that we all say it, but it's true. He has hot dice. His dice go crazy for him. When you rolled on the random magic items table in 3.5, you could keep escalating off into the fucking stratosphere with some of these rolls. So the wild time was he rolled a icy ghost touch wounding brilliant energy. So this weapon basically allowed you to ignore people's armor. That's what brilliant energy was. It was basically a lightsaber. Just goes right through stuff. So every attack ignored people's armor. The wounding gave you a -1 to Constitution every time you got hit by it. And so when you would lose con and you'd go over a tilt, so you'd go from an even to an odd, you would lose that amount of hit points immediately from your con going down. So it would basically deal extra damage equivalent to how many hit dice you had. So if the monster had 18 hit dice, every 2 attacks did an extra 18 points of damage effectively and lowered its con saves for any, poisons or anything that he might have to use. Or ravages was the ones that he used when he was a Slayer of Domiel. But my saving grace for this was that what weapon you get is randomized. And we rolled Nunchaku, which his character is a rogue. He doesn't know how to use a nunchuck. So he was like, well, can I learn how to use a nunchuck? Do I have to take a class? I'm like, yeah, you can take a feat for it, give you exotic weapon efficiency. And he was just like, no, this is dumb. And so he talked with the wizard and managed to convince me to give him a chance for the wizard to actually transmute the nunchuck into another kind of weapon. But there was a huge chance that it would just blow up this really, really expensive magic item. Or he could just take it and go sell it for a whole bunch of gold. But he knew there was no way I was going to let him take that gold and remake the same weapon. And he wanted that. So he was like, you know what, whatever. We'll chance it. So after rolling all of these crazy numbers on the treasure table, I give him one more roll. He has a 15% chance for this guy to convert the item over. He has 16 to 50, nothing happens, and you can't ever try again. Or 51 to 100, it just breaks. He rolls a 10. Okay, yeah, no, fine. We'll just hand that over. Sure, here's your dagger, Lacall. Perfect. Your fucking wounding lightsaber of destruction. Great. So now, even more problems. One of the quests that he takes up is to help free someone who has been mazed by the Lady of Pain, quote, wrongfully. Of course, all that does is get them noticed by the lady, because the Lady of Pain doesn't really like being questioned. Feel free to look up a video on her. She doesn't converse with people. Instead, she decides to just dump them in their own maze. An absolute nightmare of one that is legendary to this day. My wife at the time used to play D&D with us, and she didn't have time to play with us at the moment, but what she did do was make what she felt was a really cool and challenging maze, because I was having an issue trying to come up with a way to make anything other than just a walking simulator puzzle or a creature feature. And this maze was awful. It was a full maze, sure. Had some cool moving walls and stuff, but you started with no equipment. Fun. Had to find stuff inside. Fun. But everything was trapped. I don't mean everything. I mean everything. She knew Lacall was a super rogue, so in order to keep him entertained, she went overboard. If the square had a trap, then you had to find and disable that. Then the chest was trapped. Then the inside of the box was trapped. And sometimes the treasure was trapped, or even better, cursed. One of those is enough to drive a lot of parties to tear their hair out, because the amount of micromanaging is frustrating. It's not good design. And this maze was full of them. And even better, anything from their gear they didn't retrieve before they leave the maze is lost forever. So you have to full clear this fucking nightmare. We lasted about 3 hours with her there, full of glee at the party's rising fury, before she left to go to class. After that, it got a lot easier all of a sudden, and we all laughed to this day of the awful death dungeon that she made for us. It was an experience, to be sure. One of the really cool things that he did was we would start going through, and as he was kind of like getting to the point where he was embracing recovering and being a good character, he also was trying to embrace like his status as an assassin and kind of like balancing that out. You know, oh, I don't just kill people anymore. I hunt down like the worst of the worst monsters. And one of the things that we found that was really cool was actually in a book by Legends and Layers called The Path of Shadow for the D20 system. And they had prestige classes in there, but one of the other things that they had was legendary classes. And these ones were better than prestige classes. They had higher prerequisites, and once you started taking levels in them, you couldn't stop. And for every level, you had to do some tasks. So it was almost like a Hercules style, you know, go do these series of tasks in order to be allowed to gain levels. And it was kind of cool because you like lock yourself out of leveling otherwise. And he thought that was a really cool challenge. I mean, the guy plays Final Fantasy XI today. So you can tell, obviously, he likes that old school EverQuest style, you know, no map challenge of go figure it out. Which probably explains why he was so good at turning all of my plans against me and becoming even more powerful every time I tried to strike him down, like freaking Obi-Wan. One of these tasks was when an assassin wants to become a Grey Hand, they have to set before themselves 3 nearly impossible tasks. And the first one was you have to survive the poisoned barbs of the venomous Grey Dragon. Well, I didn't know what a Grey Dragon was. I don't know if it was in one of their other books or something like that, but I knew that we were in Planescape and we had wild, crazy stuff out there. So I just decided to take a Fang Dragon, which are the ones that like could throw thorns at you. They're very physically powerful, but they're not, you know, as like intelligent or talkative as other dragons. Wild animal of destruction. Think Monster Hunter. I created a triple ancient Great Fang Dragon that was the progenitor of all of these dragons, and he had to go and survive the poisonous barb from that. He had to get stuck with one of its barbs and survive the poison. Well, of course he doesn't have to do anything. Neither do I. I made an entire lair for this thing. The entire area of this plane was like completely flooded over by her brood. And she was the top apex of it all. And inside of this like giant hollowed out, almost like a crater with like a dome. It was supposed to basically be like an ancient civilization that she had single-handedly destroyed. But they never really explored the area. He went there by himself instead of taking the whole party. He goes in and sees that she's got this massive treasure hoard, which of course I made the mistake of rolling up. And I'm thinking, you know, there's no way he can take on this thing. It's way too powerful for him. There's nothing that he can do about her. But she doesn't have spells. She flies around like a normal monster. So he taunts her from a hole in the dome, gets her to throw her spikes at him, and gets stuck by one, and is like, okay, I'm poisoned. You know, unless I get an antidote or something, eventually I'm going to die, but I don't die like instantaneously. It's an over time thing. And so after taunting her, she's flying up to try and kill him, and he flies away. I'm like, all right, cool. Got it. Don't got it. I did not have it, in fact. This jerk had asked me to describe the treasure hoard, and so I did, and had already decided what things in that treasure hoard he wanted. So he flew away, then used the Ring of Dimension Door to teleport faster than she could fly to get back, grabbed a bunch of her stuff, and then plane shifted and got away. And I'm just like, damn it. Again? He got away with a staff of power, which he could use because, you know, he had used magic device, and more dangerously, an amulet of the plains, which he turned into a circlet using the same transmutation trick as before and wears around now. And I'm just like, so now he's just plane shifted basically at will. What am I even doing? He started using his list of planar knowledge to just be like, oh, I'm in trouble with this. All right, I'm going to plane shift here so that I'll be safe. Oh, I'm fighting this monster and it's doing this. All right, I'm going to grab a hold of it and I'm going to plane shift with it to here where that monster's weakness is and I'm fine. Like, the like 3D chess that this man was playing with me was great. And at the same time, I was getting, my kicks because I'm watching him, going, like, clawing his way back from ineffably evil and, like, going out and doing good deeds. And at first it was just, I need to do good deeds to restore myself. And then eventually it just became like, I do good things. Like, I just gotta. And he was always, like, slightly begrudging about it. But it started out as like I guess I better do that or I'll just be damned. And then it ended up as more like a Tsundere anime character being like, well, it's not like I want to save you, Truck-kun. It was great. His second task was going and drinking from the river Styx and almost dying. So touching the river Styx is supposed to immediately kill you. So I had to come up with rules for how it kills you and how, like, you could survive it. And he had to not only go to the river Styx and do this, but by this point, he had started killing off devils and demons and stuff like that because he was mad that the devils, Bel specifically, were the ones that originally really screwed him. And that he had to go to the river Styx, which is in hell. So he had to fight his way there and then crawl his way back to the portal, poisoned, to survive. And that was, unfortunately, as far as we got down the Greyhand path, because the game ended before you could get the last task done. But I like to think that he definitely did. The last one was you have to go steal a phylactery from a lich, and then you have to keep the phylactery on you for a year and a day, and then return it to the lich. Then the Greyhands will accept you. Before he was able to go through and try and find his way to the third one, the war that effectively he had been the catalyst for really kicked off. The followers of Obad-Hai had been laying siege to the Yggdrasil, and finally they were breaking through. So the unicorn calls for their help. And sure enough, they answer. And Q, the barbarian, and my wife's now, who had joined them, she made a crazy scientist who was obsessed with sciencing everything. Just the wacky kind, a lot like Wilfred Fizzlebang, and we'll get to that, trust you me, are going in there. By this point, this game has gotten way out of control. I've thrown caution to the wind. I was like, what, screw this, we're doing it. We're doing everything. We want to do all the things, we're going to do all the things. So I allowed them to gestalt into their characters. So what gestalting is you get two classes at the same time in one character. And I was just like, let's just do it. And so everybody was two classes now, had the full abilities of all of them, but only in the action economy of one character. And the amount of madness in this was crazy. So the barbarian not only had a crazy barbarian prestige class that allowed him to turn into a bear when he raged and get bigger, but also he had a weapon master. There was a weapon master class, I forget which one it was, but it allowed you sometimes when you attacked to just declare that your attack was a critical hit. And he had gone full Great Cleave, so he would just cleave through hordes of enemies. He was having the time of his life. My wife at the time, she multi-classed cleric, wizard, and went Mystic Theurge. And so she created a blowgun that she used to shoot darts that had potions in them at people, which I thought was entertaining. And so this mad group of insane people go to the Yggdrasil and start fighting their way up it, just cleaving through hordes of Obad-Hai's followers. There's like one small area where some of the followers of Ilana have like holed up on one of the branches because it has giant knots in it where there are like entire small towns. I had really gone ham on this whole thing. And so they fought through in a bunch of stages, and right before the last stage, I had come up with some really cool ideas. I liked spell tattoos. I thought they were really interesting, and I thought that it would be really cool, like a very nature thing. Like you always see the elves got the like crazy tattoos and stuff when they're the wood elves, and I was like, yeah, we'll do that. And so I came up with some custom tattoos using planar creatures, because I'm also obsessed with Planescape. So the one that everybody chose, because I didn't realize how broken it was the tattoo of the Arrowhawk, which was a elemental creature from the elemental plane of air, which is like a 4-sided bird. It's really cool looking. Look up a picture of it if you can. Hopefully Chesh will put one in here. They look great because they have like one wing on each side of their body, so they fly around like a cross. 3.0 had some really cool stuff, all right? So Planescape was amazing. But Arrowhawk Tattoo allowed them to basically just pay a crap ton of gold to be able to cast Fly. And I had not fully realized the insanity of having a flying bear that could cleave in like a 15-foot radius around him, until he started spinning like a dreidel over the entire army of my foes and cutting all of their heads off by just declaring, oh, this is a max damage critical hit, and all of these people die. And I'm like, oh my god, what did I do? So Lacall wasn't the only person who broke things that I did, but he was the one who told the barbarian, like, hey, you need to take that tattoo. We're all taking that one. Because I was like, oh, you can only have one tattoo. And then they looked at the list and they're like, oh, yeah, well, we all get this one. And I was like, oh, cool. They're all wanting to do like a theme together. No, it was just the most powerful one. I was just being, I just handed them something I shouldn't have. Go me. Fortunately, in the same adventure, I also got to have some fun with Lacall. And so did my wife, because she made Lacall and Ben now hate the exact phrase "for science," because my wife's character, the insane scientist, would just do random things and then always yell that out. That was like her catchphrase. But she was doing like really inane, weird stuff that wasn't useful or helpful, and was avoiding actually helping the party during combat. So instead of being funny, it actually just made everybody mad. And so it is now a thing in my games that if you go "for science," there's a decent chance that I will just have Lacall appear and instantly kill you and then disappear into the plains. I don't actually use it to kill people, but it is a really funny joke. Every table has their jokes. That's one of ours. And then we got to the Battle of the World Tree. They fought their way to the top, and I had come up with this really, really crazy pair that were the high priests of Obad-Hai. And it was a pair of dragons. One was a blue dragon, and one was a green dragon. One was a druid, and one was a cleric. This was back when dragons could have class levels. Good luck, everybody. And this fight ended up being so insanely epic that, I mean, I don't even know if today I could do it justice, because it was wild. They were summoning all kinds of animals, celestial animals, infernal animals, and the barbarian was having to carve through them just to get to the foes. Lacall is jumping around and teleporting. You had the old rules for tumble, where he was making tumble checks and tumbling through the squares of like 15 opponents in order to get a strike on one of the dragons before it flew off. They're getting hit with breath weapons. People are getting, protection spells thrown out, offensive spells trying to blast their followers away, and it's a full-on war. And it's basically, at this point, just the members of this party against all of the followers of Obad-Hai that are trying to take the World Tree for themselves. And the way the fight ended was absolutely nuts. One of the dragons was going to actually get away. They flew off of the World Tree, and they were like, if they get away, they're just going to regroup. Lacall did not have a charge left of his ability to fly, because it had gotten dispelled off of him after he used it. And so I was like, ha, got him, my monster got away. And I was going to continue the campaign from there. No, he just takes a nosedive right off the side of the World Tree, like off of this giant skyscraper-sized tree, and it's just like, I'm pretty sure I can catch it. And I'm like, I don't think you can. And so we start crunching the numbers. He's got 3 charges of Dimension Door. I've got my amount of movement speed, and I'm like, all right, well, how far can I get away? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and do this. And he's like I'm not going to be able to do it unless I figure out some gimmick. Give me a minute. And so he goes over, he starts thinking about some stuff. He like looks at the map. He's like, all right, she's flying over that way. That's near where our base camp was, at the base of the Yggdrasil. So this is what I'm going to do. So he's plummeting towards the ground. He uses the Amulet of the Planes to transport himself to a plane that has high gravity, doubling his fall speed. Then uses the Amulet of the Planes to teleport himself back to the base camp. And he's like, when I come out, I can come out going in whatever direction, right? I'm like, yeah, that's according to the rules, yes. And he was like, okay, when I come out, I'm going up. And it basically catapults himself upwards to grab onto the dragon and stab it. And so stabs the dragon, manages to get the killing blow because he had studied it as he was falling. He was like, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. And then teleports through, plane shifts to the other side, gets a hold of the dragon. And I'm like, I think that I could argue in this moment that you can't do that. I think that we're bending some rules here, but it's so cool that even if I could argue it, I don't want to at that point. That's really awesome that he uses a high gravitational field plane, because all the planes have their own characteristics. They can have high gravity, they can have low gravity, different spells can work differently in different areas. And so he uses that, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna let that happen because that's sick. And he manages to gack the dragon. The dragon fails its constitution saving throw because it's like DC 29 or something at this point, because he's nuts level assassin. They both crash to the ground. Lacall is still beat up because they didn't get through it, they didn't walk through this combat like they were gods. I made it challenging. There were multiple enemy spellcasters of both divine and arcane. He gets through and he's tattered. The dragon crashes, and at the end of the line, with the falling damage that he took from crashing to the ground with the dragon in the forest, he's at 3 hit points. And I'm just like, that's game, everybody. That's game. I'll give him a round of applause. Good job. Man, what an insane fight. And so I narrated, the followers of Ilana managing to take the world tree. The followers of Obad-Hai were forced to submit again and actually start working with the followers of Ilana because they're most powerful members of Tooth and Claw. That was the whole thing. One of them was Tooth, and one of them was Claw, the cleric and the druid. And so they won that war temporarily because, of course, things are eventually going to happen. And Lacall's like, all right, so now our next goal is we have to siege the Hells. We have to siege Bel's citadel, and we have to free Ilana. And so he talks with me and the rest of the party. The barbarian is going to go back to his barbarian clan now that he's this super powerful barbarian. He's going to recruit all of them to march to war. The cleric, wizard, theurge, mixing potion person is going to create all kinds of crazy abominations using her magics. And they're going to gather a bunch of holy orders from different planes, and they are going to march on Bel's citadel. And while that battle is going on, they're going to free Ilana. And that was our last game session, unfortunately. We never managed to play again. But, I like to think that despite the fact that we didn't get to actually finish it out, and that I didn't get to do all the twists and turns for Bel and them trying to basically go up against an archduke of the Hells, working with other demons to try and bring him down, and then probably betraying those demons too, because Lacall was going to kill the lot of them. And they were going to trigger a huge demonic incursion from the Grey Wastes to try and basically assist them in laying siege to the citadel. I think that at the end of the day, in my canon, Lacall eventually freed Ilana. And he is somewhere out there in the plains, still rocking around, being a badass, and working to try and get that last Path of Shadow quest done so that he can join the Grey Hands and be a legend of assassins. And honestly, I think if somebody is going to have an epic turnaround for their character, that's a pretty solid one. I let him be as evil as he wanted to be. And he was so evil that the player became uncomfortable with it and decided that they needed to redeem it. He didn't quit. He didn't stop. He didn't try and undo things and be like, well, maybe I did a little too much. Like, can we retcon that? No, he was like, we're going to go and continue forward, and I'm going to do a little bit better. And he ended up, at the end of the campaign, neutral good. And if you can get a neutral good assassin of the plains with the amount of power that he has to wipe out evil fiends, I'd say that's a pretty damn good campaign. And that's all I've got for you guys. So thank you very much for watching. We'll be rolling the credits here in just a second. But until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and thanks to our wonderful supporters that make up our little community, watching us stream the best available and everything else you see on this channel live to our supporter-only Discord. It's quite active in there, with many playing in these games or others and even running their own. This channel wouldn't exist without each and every one of you, which is why I read each and every name against my crying editor's wishes, starting with those in the power tier. Dark Sarah, Darth Cavalier, Doodle Poodle, Emanon, Jay Jones, John the Wicked, Joshua Williams, Sneaky G.I., and the Traveling Bard Extraordinaire. In the Planar tier, Ice Commander, Ice Dragon, and Sparkle Lord the Fabulous. In the Adventurer tier, All's Fiction, Bastion Falconwrath, Dragon Tempest, John R300, Justin, Katie, Moshope Akinwale, Mystics, Ty Korjak, and V. In the Questgiver tier, Breezebender, Chris Householder, Cold Brad, Dark Sarah, Jesse Labrie, Link FD, Kyla, Lunatic Overlord, Night Archer, Mitsuya VA, ODST Hero, PPNTT807, Robert Edwards, Robert Mischief, Rio 1990, Sephiroth Kurosame, Sin for You, and Y87. In the Townsfolk tier, Adrian, Blizzard Hawk, Bird or the Cage, Biz Adrian, Brett Bemis, Dylan Taylor, Doodle Poodle, Enrique, Gordy Danky, Kazuko, Lone Soul 6, Love Bites Back, Mordant Dragon, Scott Stedman, Sense Backpack, Sergeant Humpty, Sherlock, Shugenja, Tom Brazo, Wicked Ways, and Xanathar. A special thank you to our first ever supporter and longest standing supporter, Scion of Magnus and Sammy Wolf. And as always, I can't forget to mention our creative team, Doodle Poodle, Nala Fontaine, Shadow Wolf, Scorpius187, MC_Cheshire, Thriving Inferno, and TheForeverDM. Me. Thank you for watching to the end, and as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you in the next one. Good night, all.